Hello there, and welcome back to DSR Ghostwriting on YouTube and also here on LinkedIn. My name is Daniel Rosell, and I want to record a video that is a little bit more specific than my previous video about where you should publish your thought leadership. And if you do want a more general overview of the topic, then I recommend checking out my video, which is on, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, it's on the DSR Ghostwriting LinkedIn page, and it's called On-Site versus Off-Site. And I basically break down the pros and cons from an SEO standpoint of publishing thought leadership on a website you manage that's on-site versus a website you don't manage that's off-site, and the difference between a off-site location which you have editorial control over and one which you don't have editorial control over. So there are nuances from an SEO standpoint, and if you're planning out thought leadership and you really want to be strategic, then it's worth keeping those things in mind. But in this specific post, I want to actually dive just a bit deeper into Medium and LinkedIn, because these are specifically two platforms that I get asked about all the time, and clearly I'm posting this to both. So basically, let's just look at it from that standpoint firstly. So what's the commonality between Medium and LinkedIn? Well, they're both off-site platforms. So you do not own, as the publisher, Medium, and you don't own LinkedIn. So when you're publishing something to LinkedIn Pulse, which is at the time I'm recording this, LinkedIn's article publishing service, or Medium for that matter, then you're publishing on medium.com and linkedin.com respectively. When we look at domain names, we're looking really from an SEO standpoint at the TLD, the top level domain. That's where the domain authority basically lies. They're not on subdomains. They're on the main domain of Medium and LinkedIn. So there are pros and cons there. The major con is that you're not building up the SEO of your website. If you publish on your own website, the more you do that, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not talking about real deep SEO optimization. I'm just giving you a basic picture of are publishing in these destinations, which is going to be more beneficial for SEO. You have higher domain authority, generally speaking, on Medium and LinkedIn than your website, for the simple reason that these are gigantic websites with enormous traffic across them, and it's extremely unlikely, and massive backlink volumes, and it's astronomically unlikely that your corporate site or blog has more authority and more SEO behind it than LinkedIn or Medium. So by publishing there, you're piggybacking to an extent on their SEO, in that you're creating content with the keywords are going to rank on a domain with high authority, and that's going to help if you want those keywords to be picked up in organic searches. But the negative is that you are not going to be building up the domain of your website, which is a slow labor of love. But the more you post, the more content and blog posts, which is evergreen content, as compared to social content, which decreases once you push it out. Social content, like a Facebook status, vanishes and kind of disappears into the dark reaches of the internet. And blogs are evergreen. So they continue, they have ongoing value. So that's just really the main difference. Firstly, just to summarize what I just said, is that if you're publishing on Medium or LinkedIn, you're inheriting their domain authority, and you're publishing on big platforms, but you're not building up your own website. The nice thing is, if to publish on Medium and to publish on LinkedIn, you don't need a website. You don't need to know how to run a website. You don't need to know how to do basically any maintenance. All the work's done for you. There's one negative from a backup standpoint. It's almost always preferable to do things on your own website or your own media, because you can control when to back things up. And I'm a backup guy, so I always encourage anybody creating content, whether they're working with a professional marketing consultant or just doing it for themselves, they should always keep an original copy of their content. Trust me, I've seen so many people that have lost writing they worked really hard on simply because they never took a backup. So don't be that person. Medium versus LinkedIn. So a couple of nuances here. Medium, if you want to syndicate, that's one option, and that's kind of like the best of both worlds in a way. So you can publish firstly on your website, on your corporate blog, company website, whatever the case may be, and then you can import to Medium. So if you have a Medium account, just check this out. Click into stories, in the top right hand menu and click import, and you'll paste the URL. You have to own the content. And what that will do behind the scenes from a HTML standpoint, from an SEO standpoint, is it will affix a canonical tag to that Medium post, letting the search engine bots know that it's not original content. It's a copy of content that was first published elsewhere. LinkedIn does not have this feature. So that's one significant difference between LinkedIn and Medium in terms of syndication destinations, that Medium would be preferable. You could publish on LinkedIn Pulse and then syndicate to Medium. That's an option. That's a fine option. And you could syndicate back to your website, but then you'd want to be adding those canonical tags on your website. You don't want to have two identical copies of content that neither has a canonical, and Google or any search engine is going to think you're going to be, it's believed that you're going to be penalized for having duplicate content, putting those out. So the best practice that you should do is to append canonical tags to whichever one you want to be the copy. So that's basically it in terms of the real pros and cons. I mean, there's obviously more that can be said, because LinkedIn and Medium, I mean, they're different communities. So it depends who's in your network, who are you trying to reach. Perhaps your professional network's really on LinkedIn, or perhaps you're more in a creative space and Medium's a better place. There's no hard and fast answer. They're both nice publishing platforms in terms of the user interfaces, but those are just some of the pros and cons from SEO and other standpoints, that if you're considering publishing thought leadership or content marketing to these platforms, it would be a good idea to keep those points in mind.